Hello everybody, I'm doing a video today to talk about Project Highrise. This is a new game that's been released on PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch and I assume Xbox One. It has spent quite a while as a premium game on mobile, and I've been playing it since it launched on mobile, really. It's actually a game that I've found myself to be quite addicted to over a longer period of time, as I do tend to get with the better simulation games out there. And I was really keen to see how it translates over to console. And it definitely is the definitive version. In buying the console version, you get all the DLC that was added to the mobile game after the fact and all that kind of stuff. So right from the start, you get the complete package, and therefore it's definitely kind of the way to go if you haven't played this yet. And I wanted to talk about it because I really do enjoy it. I like a good simulation game, and this one has had staying power. So as you can probably tell from the footage, this is a riff on the old Sim Tower, which was a classic simulation game that a lot of people, including myself, have fond memories of and wish that it was still around in one form or another. It's not really, but we have now Project Highrise, which is not a bad compromise. Where in SimCity, or for a more modern example, I guess, City Skylines, you need to build an entire city and figure out a balance between industrial, commercial and residential buildings. In this one, it's a much more narrow focus in that you're just focusing on a single tower or tower block, and you need to fill that tower block with rooms, apartments, whatever you want to call them, that will then generate profit via rent. So you'll start off with very little money and basically no space, a ground floor, and that's really it. And you need to use your money to start to build up a tower and get it as big as possible and get as many people into it as possible as soon as possible, so that you can start generating profit before your original cash runs out. You start off by really only being able to put single kind of little studio apartments or small single person offices into your tower. But as you go on, you can start to add more complex dwellings, such as 2-bedroom apartments, 3-bedroom apartments, penthouse apartments, all that kind of stuff, and larger office spaces for more complex businesses. You start off with just putting accountants in, and nobody wants accountants in their buildings. So after a while, you can kind of demolish those small spaces and put much larger offices in, which can hold more complex tax collection or game development or a whole range of much more interesting businesses, basically. And those more interesting businesses also give you more money in rent, so of course it's a better thing to do. The challenge is, I guess, that each type of dwelling has its own demands. So these studio apartments that you see at the start of the game, they have very limited demands. They just really need an electrical connection, and that's enough. They're happy. Some water, they need electricity and water, and that's really the only infrastructure they need. But as you get more complex dwellings in, they start asking for plumbers and handymen, and they need a phone line, for example. If you have more complex offices, they need courier services, they need copier services, and you need to put all of those things in, generally into the basement of the building. The basement holds a lot of the infrastructure pieces, and those all cost money. So of course you need to then spend more money if you want the higher quality dwellings in there. And the game's pretty well balanced, I've got to say. I play it on normal difficulty. It's not too strenuous at that point, but it's enough to keep you on your toes and make sure that you don't make any stupid mistakes. And if you don't build things efficiently or effectively, then yes, you'll run out of money and have to restart the game. So it's not an easy game as such. It's not a casual mobile kind of game, even though it started on the iPad. This is a proper simulation where there is possible lose states. It is possible to fail at this game. So it's much more like that Sim Tower, Sim City experience than some of the more recent kind of time-wasting simulations that we've seen. The thing I really enjoy doing the most, funnily enough, is focusing on the retail part, which generally you need to have it down to the bottom because the foot traffic comes through the bottom floors, the bottom couple of floors of your building, and you can put retailers in there, and in fact the tenants and the residents and the office employees, they all kind of expect you to have those as kind of services down the bottom. They'll want to get their breakfast, they'll want to get their lunch, so you need to have cafes, you need to have restaurants, they'll want to buy magazines and souvenirs and all of that kind of stuff. And as you play on, you can build bus shelters and you can build metro lines, and you can start encouraging people from outside of the building to also come and visit your shops. And of course those shops have their own infrastructure to consider as well. A lot of the shops, for example, will want security guards, and they'll want all kinds of other things as well. But if you manage that side of things well, it can be really lucrative because they can actually bring a lot of revenue in and then pay a lot in rent back to you. So that's the most interesting part of the game for me. And I like it as well because it kind of goes to this thing that I've noticed, or this philosophy behind tower design, modern tower design, that these buildings are kind of self-contained cities or communities within themselves. So the people are living, in the top floors. You've got offices in the middle floors, or there's a combination where it's split in some way. And then on the bottom floors, you've got entertainment quarter and shopping and all that kind of stuff. So really, the people who are in these towers are encouraged not to really leave, it's interesting. It kind of goes to that idea that even though we're living in cities that are getting ever bigger, the actual communities within those cities are shrinking. And I find that Project Highrise actually does a really good job of simulating that, because I build these towers which have basically everything you could possibly want in them, and I'm wondering, if I was living there, would I ever actually leave? And the answer is probably no, to be honest. I like to think my towers are pretty cool, livable places. Speaking of livability, that's another thing you have to think about when you're playing Project Highrise. You need to, as you would have seen through the footage, the rooms or the blocks, the apartments, the office blocks, the retailers, they can all actually get quite grimy if they're not looked after, or if you don't regularly pay for their upkeep. So when they start to get grimy, you then have to go through a renovation and make sure that they get cleaned and all that kind of stuff. And that can be a big wear on your finances. You need to think about ways, I guess, to reduce the grime, and also to make sure that you have some money put aside so that when the grime shows up, you can get it clean, because otherwise the tenants tend to get very upset by the poor living standards that you are providing them. And of course, you need to think about noise. If it's residential apartments, people don't like to have too much noise around. Certain shops don't like to have too many smells around, so you've got to make sure you place the bins in a very different place. So just like a SimCity game, you need to think about all the placement of all the various things that you put into your tower, and it all feels, again, very authentic to that idea that these towers are becoming self-contained cities in themselves. So it's like a Sim City within the confines of four walls. The good thing about Project Highrise, and to be honest, I actually can't remember if it's possible in the mobile version of the game, but it's actually possible to have a lot of space for this one if you want. The sandbox mode gives you a very large map option, and if you do that, you can actually kind of build 3 concurrent towers, which I like to do, where you've got a commercial or a business office tower, you've got a residential office tower, and then you've got a hotel tower, and each one of them is kind of focused on providing the best experience for the people that tower needs to. And between that you have links which has all the retail shops and the bus stop and the metro train line and all that kind of stuff. So you do get to do, there's what I guess I'm saying is that you get to do an awful lot of planning in this game, and it's all very engaging stuff. It's all very simple. This is a tiny game to download. It's about 150 megabytes on the PlayStation 4, so it is a very small game. It's got repetitive music, as you can probably tell. The visuals are quite simple, so it's not going to set the world on fire in terms of the presentational elements, but it's nice, and it does all it needs to do. You definitely get the sense that your tower is getting bigger and bigger, and it looks more impressive from when you start and you've only got, a two-floor building, to when you've got a 10-floor high-rise and you're seeing people move around constantly all day and night. It has that real sense of vibrancy about it. It feels like you've created something that is alive as such. Each of the different shops and restaurants has its own design, and if you like building donut shops like I do, you can have a couple of different donut shops, or if you prefer hot dog stands, there's lots of different types of shops that you can build. Those don't necessarily have a mechanical effect. If it's classed as a small food court restaurant, you'll have a couple of different options of what type of food court restaurant that is, but the effect it'll have will be the same, so it's really an aesthetic choice. But that goes to the kind of sense of detail that this game has. It looks like the developers have really worked hard to make sure that everybody can create their own kind of ideal tower, and yeah, I really recommend this game. I haven't talked about it probably as much as I should have, I guess because as a mobile game it has limited interest to the gamer community as such, but now that it's on console, now that it's on PlayStation 4, people who aren't very big on their mobile games should check it out. It's nice and cheap. It won't break the bank. I would recommend it probably on the Switch ahead of the PlayStation 4, even though I've done my recording and my review on the PlayStation 4 version. The Switch version is obviously portable, so this game really works best when you play it for short periods of time, and portability is a big part of that. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope if you are a fan of simulation games and you didn't have this on your radar, it is there now, because it's actually really good fun, and I highly recommend it. So thanks very much for watching this video, and we will see you at the next one.